The CEO looked at the outstretched hand and turned away. No hesitation, no apology, not even a glance. Just nothing. There were 12 people in that boardroom, 12 witnesses, and every single one of them saw exactly what happened. The man whose hand had been refused didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't pull back fast or make a sound. He held that hand in the air for 3 full seconds. 1, 2, 3, and then he lowered it, slowly, deliberately, like he was setting something down that he'd never need to pick up again. He straightened his jacket. He sat down. He didn't say a single word. His name was Marcus Ellison, 44 years old. He had flown in from New York that morning specifically for this meeting. His firm managed over $4 billion in assets. The watch on his wrist cost more than most people's cars. And the CEO of Vantage Technologies, a man named Gerald Holt, had just refused to shake his hand, in public, in front of his own board, without explanation, without hesitation, like it was nothing. But here's what Gerald Holt didn't understand. The meeting wasn't over. It was just getting started. And what Marcus Ellison did in the next 40 minutes, and what happened to Vantage Technologies in the 6 months that followed, is the kind of story you don't forget. Stay with me. Marcus Ellison did not grow up in boardrooms. He grew up in Newark, New Jersey, youngest of 3 kids. His mother worked the same post office route for 31 years. Same route, same hours, same quiet, unshakable reliability. His father drove a city bus 5 days a week and coached Little League on weekends, showing up for other people's kids because that's just what you did. They weren't rich, but they were stable. And in the neighborhood Marcus grew up in, stable was its own kind of wealth. Marcus was the kid who read everything. Library books, cereal boxes, the fine print on his mother's utility bills just to understand what the numbers meant. His 3rd grade teacher told his parents he asked too many questions. His mother told her that was the point. He got a full scholarship to Georgetown, studied economics, then a master's degree at Wharton, graduated into the financial industry at 24, and spent the next 12 years learning how money actually moved, not from textbooks, but from rooms. Real rooms. The rooms where real decisions happened, and real power sat, and real people decided who got access and who didn't. He watched all of it, filed all of it away. At 36, he launched Ellison Capital Partners. 2 employees, 1 institutional client, 1 belief, fund companies worth believing in, not stories, not personalities, fundamentals. By year 3, 18 employees, a track record that made bigger firms nervous. By year 8, $4.2 billion under management. $4.2 billion. Vantage Technologies had come to Marcus's firm 18 months earlier through a mutual contact. Enterprise software company, solid product, growing customer base, genuinely interesting technology around supply chain automation. They needed a major funding injection to scale internationally. $200 million, over 3 years. Marcus's team spent 4 months doing due diligence. The numbers were strong, the market was right, the product worked. Marcus was genuinely excited about this one. He scheduled the final meeting himself, flew to Chicago, arrived at Vantage headquarters at 9 in the morning, dark suit, leather portfolio, the same handshake that had closed 37 deals across his career. What he didn't know, what none of his research had surfaced, was that Gerald Holt had made certain comments at a private dinner 3 months earlier. Comments his own board members had heard. Comments they had discussed quietly among themselves, and decided, collectively, to say nothing about. What Marcus also didn't know was that one board member, a woman named Patricia Morse, had written down exactly what Gerald said that night, and kept it. Marcus walked into that boardroom believing he was there to finalize a partnership. Gerald Holt looked at his extended hand, and turned away. And in the 3 seconds that followed, 3 seconds where Marcus held that hand in the air, something shifted in him. Not rage, not humiliation. Clarity. He sat down, opened his portfolio, and prepared to run the most precise 40 minutes of business he had ever conducted in his life. Gerald Holt took his seat at the head of the table, straightened his jacket, smiled at the room, the easy, automatic smile of a man who had never once been held accountable for anything small. Marcus, welcome. Glad you could make it out. Let's get into the numbers. No acknowledgement of what had just happened. No explanation. Nothing. Marcus opened his portfolio. Before the numbers, he said, quiet. Even, I'd like to understand the team dynamic a little better. Gerald, how long have you been with Vantage? Gerald blinked. This wasn't the agenda. 11 years. Founded it, actually. 11 years, Marcus repeated. He wrote something down. And the board. How often do you meet? Quarterly. Sometimes more. And decisions of this scale, a $200 million funding round, those go through. The full board, Of course. Marcus nodded. Slowly, like a man filing information in a room only he could see. He spent the next 20 minutes going through the financials, methodically, precisely, asking questions that seemed routine, but weren't. Questions that mapped the decision-making structure, the accountability chains, the places where Gerald Holt's judgment had final say and nobody else's did. He was building something. Nobody in the room could quite see what yet. Patricia Morse could. She had both hands flat on the table. She wasn't looking at Gerald. She was watching Marcus, and her expression was the expression of someone watching something they had been waiting a long time to see. At the 30-minute mark, Marcus closed his portfolio. "I have everything I need," he said. Gerald smiled. The smile of a man who thought this was going well. "Excellent. So, we're moving forward?" Marcus looked at him. "No," he said. "We're not." The room did not move. Gerald's smile stayed on his face for about 2 full seconds after it had stopped meaning anything. "I'm sorry?" "Ellison Capital is withdrawing from this funding round," Marcus said. Flat. Even. The particular calm of a man stating a fact he has already made peace with. "Effective today," Gerald laughed. The short, disbelieving laugh of a man who thinks something must be a misunderstanding. "Marcus, if this is about the... Look, I apologize if the greeting earlier was..." "It isn't about the greeting," Marcus said. A beat. Gerald leaned forward slightly. "Then what is it about?" Marcus looked around the table. At each face, that slowly, one by one, then back to Gerald. "It's about judgment," Marcus said. "We fund companies for 3 to 5 year horizons. That means we're betting on leadership as much as product. And in the last 40 minutes, I've identified 3 decision-making patterns in this organization that concern me significantly." He opened his portfolio, turned to a specific page. Concentration of authority in a single executive without structured board override. A compensation structure that incentivizes short-term revenue over sustainable margin. And a culture, and I use that word deliberately, that I believe carries material risk for the kind of institutional partnerships you'll need to scale internationally. Every word precise. Every word defensible. Every word true. And every person in that room knew exactly which culture he was referring to, and exactly where it started. Gerald's voice had lost all warmth now. "You're walking away from a $200 million deal over a cultural concern. I'm protecting my investors," Marcus said simply. "That's my job." He stood up, closed the portfolio, buttoned his jacket. "I wish Vantage well," he said, genuinely, and he walked out. The door closed behind him, and for 4 full seconds, nobody in that boardroom said a single word. Marcus was in the elevator when his phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "Mr. Ellison. My name is Patricia Morse. I'm on the Vantage board. I have something you need to see. Can we talk?" He read it once, read it again, then typed back 2 words. "I'm listening." What Patricia sent him over the next hour, secure, documented, time-stamped, was the written record she had kept from that private dinner 3 months earlier. Gerald Holt's exact words, about why he had reservations about taking funding from certain kinds of investors. Words that weren't just offensive. Words that, in the context of a company seeking $200 million in institutional, capital and international partnerships, were catastrophic. Marcus forwarded it to his legal team, and, carefully, without aggression, he forwarded it to 2 journalists he trusted. Not to publish, just to hold. Pause. 1 second. Over the following 6 weeks, 3 other institutional investors who had been in conversations with Vantage quietly withdrew. Word travels in this industry in ways that never make the news. Vantage went back to market for the funding round, found no takers. Tried to restructure, failed. Week 14, Gerald Holt resigned. Week 19, the Vantage board announced the company was exploring a sale. Week 22, 6 months after that boardroom meeting, Vantage Technologies was acquired at a distressed valuation for $41 million. They had been seeking $200 million in growth funding 6 months earlier. Read that again. $200 million to $41 million. 6 months. One refused Handshake. And Marcus? Marcus was back at his desk in New York, reading the acquisition news. He closed the tab and went back to work. Marcus Ellison did not give interviews about Vantage Technologies, didn't post about it, didn't reference it in speeches, didn't let his team use it as a case study, at least not publicly. When a journalist eventually connected the dots and called for comment, Marcus gave 4 words. "We made a judgment call. That was it. No press release. No statement. No moment crafted for the camera. Just 4 words and a closed tab." But inside Ellison Capital, the story did get told. Once. At a team meeting 3 months after the acquisition, Marcus stood at the front of the room and told his team exactly what had happened. The meeting. The handshake. Patricia's message, the withdrawal, all of it. And then he said something nobody expected. "I want to be clear about something," he said. "We didn't pull the funding because Gerald Holt was rude to me. We pulled it because a CEO who treats people that way, in a room full of witnesses, has already told you everything you need to know about how he'll treat partners, employees, and clients when the pressure is on. That's not a personal grievance. That's a risk assessment." The room was quiet. Not the uncomfortable quiet of a room that doesn't know what to say. The quiet of a room that understands. Patricia Morse resigned from the Vantage board 2 weeks after Gerald Holt left. She sent Marcus one email afterward. It said, "I should have said something sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. Thank you for saying it, without saying it." Marcus replied, "You said it when it mattered. That's enough. And here's what I keep coming back to. Gerald Holt didn't lose his company because Marcus Ellison was powerful. He lost it because disrespect has consequences that travel faster than apologies. Because rooms remember what happened in them. Because the people who stay silent sometimes write things down. And because one man, who had every reason to react, to make it loud and public and personal, chose instead to be precise." Marcus Ellison built a $4 billion firm on one principle: fund companies worth believing in. He walked away from Vantage for the same reason. It wasn't worth believing in. Not because of the product, not because of the numbers, because of the man at the head of the table. And what one moment, one choice, one turned shoulder, told Marcus about everything else he couldn't see. One turned shoulder, one withdrawn hand, $200 million. The math is brutal, but it's accurate. After everything Marcus Ellison built, from Newark to Georgetown to Wharton to $4 billion under management, the moment that defined him most wasn't a deal he closed. It was the one he walked away from. And I keep thinking about the precision of it. No explosion, no press release, no speech at the door, just a portfolio closing, a door shutting quietly, and 6 months of consequences doing the rest. So here's what I want to ask you, and I mean this genuinely. If you were Marcus in that boardroom, hand refused, 12 witnesses, $200 million sitting on the table, what would you have done? Would you have stayed as controlled? Said something in the room? Walked out sooner? Tell me in the comments. Every single one gets read, and I think the answers are going to say a lot about all of us. If stories about power, dignity, and the real cost of disrespect are what you come back here for, subscribe. That is exactly what this channel is built to find, one story at a time. And next time, a landlord evicted a family of 4 the week before Christmas. The family's oldest daughter just became the city's new housing commissioner. Their first official meeting is next Monday. Stay close.